With American politics where they are today, is there a way to fix them? One politician says yes with Star Trek. I'm gonna say what she does. Don't jump to the immediate conclusion. Jess Phoenix is a volcanologist.
Immediate conclusion, jump to.
She studies volcanoes. She does not study Vulcan or Vulcans from there specifically, so sorry. She doesn't have a lot of Spock knowledge offhand necessarily, though I think she might just out of being a fan because she is running for Congress, but she wants to bring Star Trek values to that. What exactly are Star Trek values per se? Well, there's a reason why the Star Trek universe is considered the most hopeful and the most successful, at least by my opinion, in sci-fi, and that is because it's gotten to this point where people have gotten over the little differences and the little problems that separate us. Nobody cares if someone is a different colored skin or has no hair or has more body fat or what have you. They've gotten to this point where they've advanced science so high that technology has lifted society as a whole, and that's a very beautiful ideal. Is it something we can recreate?
No. She's so cute. She's so cute with her ideals. Look.
Oh, Jacqueline.
I am not that cynical. I'm not that cynical, but I am cynical enough to say that I appreciate her worldview and her wanting to change the status quo and to look up for all of us to be our better selves. But I live in the reality of now and Charlottesville protesters and New York Times normalizing hate, and this is not the reality where this works.
What can we do to combat that, though?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Her making a campaign on a platform of idealizing to our better selves is admirable, but I do think that the reality of changing folks' hearts and minds is not what. It's little dips, it's little shifts, it's little changes. Ellen DeGeneres did more for LGBTQ advancement than any piece of legislation ever could.
Just by dancing and
just
being a
by
nice,
being
fun
herself,
person.
Being honest, coming into folks' homes every day and showing them, oh, this is not so other, this is not so different.
Well, do you think that works on the principle of someone like who has a, well, I have one friend and they're one of the good ones?
No.
Like that kind of thing?
I mean, maybe, maybe not. All I will tell you is that I do feel that the folks with the narrowest view set are usually not exposed to anyone that changes their mind. I don't think it's unusual. I don't think it's crazy to say that one of the reasons why I want to say McCain, I think, changed some of his viewpoints. Is it McCain or is it Cheney? Cheney. It's Cheney who has a daughter who's a lesbian. And he said that his viewpoints on...
John McCain has a daughter who's on The View.
Oh, that's... Is that the one too?
Yes.
Is she? Okay. Yeah. But both of them, I believe, had lesbian daughters and they may
I don't know about any of his other daughters.
Yeah, I think they did. Either way, whatever. It kind of adjusted his way of thinking, you know what I mean, about that particular issue because he realized that it wasn't what he had thought before. Now, granted, sucks that it took you this long to figure out what people have been saying for that long, but I think that's a better reality than to say we should just idealize to be this utopian society. I think
it's a little too far to say that this is a Star Trek ideal, but what she is running on is a very pro-science ideal, which is to stop gutting environmental legislation and protections in particular. She is a science, and she did come out of the group, and we did talk about this, I don't know, months ago, maybe a year ago on NerdAlert, called 314 Action. And this is a group that is trying to enable scientists to run and organize political campaigns for office. And the idea here is that scientists are the most knowledgeable on science. This is obvious, but they kind of stay out of the public spotlight. They
want to be scientists.
They want to be scientists. They may work more in a more isolated universe in which they are studying these facts and data and what have you. And unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily lend to much change in public opinion and in legislation itself. So their idea was to put people who have this knowledge in a place where they can inform the public and actually have the power to make change. I think it's a good idea because so many times we see elected officials completely ignorant about basic scientific concepts. How many times have you seen someone running for office who doesn't understand human biology, if it's about a woman specifically, or about how global warming works, or what factors we are facing environmentally and as people who are biological beings here. And the idea, I think, is good, which is to put people who aren't completely ignorant and stupid in charge.
I like that idea. Smart is always the best decision in all things. I think like in both politics and science and the world at large, I spoke to someone recently who said, you know what I'm doing is for the next year, I'm just picking the smart, I'm deciding to do smart things. Like he's trying to do smart work, whether it be entertainment or whatever. I do think though that even with her, politics is a beast that it's sort of like when you try to explain the industry to people that don't work out here and they look at you and they're like, how is that a thing? Like, how is that the way that it works? You're like, that's the way that it works. And to enact change in it, it takes something huge to make it happen. Like you could tell people stories about things that have changed in sexual harassment and such, right? You would tell them these stories and they would look at you and be like, well, how is that normal? Like, well, this is why, you know what I mean? I think the same thing can be said for politics. So putting her in that seat and having her be a smart voice is great. But if you don't start changing the folks that she's got to work with, it's just going to be her shouting at the rain.
Baby steps, right? Baby steps. Audience, do you think that an idealistic candidate who is pro-science can succeed in today's political environment? Please let us know your thoughts on Facebook and on Twitter.